Hi everyone. Hope everyone's had an amazing week. I definitely have. Um, the weather hasn't been too cold this week, so that's a good thing. This Sunday we're going to be listening to a story from Joshua 3 and 4. Now it's quite a long story, so I'm not going to read it on the video. You're going to have the task to read Joshua 3 and 4. It's about the crossing of the river Jordan. So when the Israelites crossed the river and God made a way for them when things seemed like they were impossible. So it's a really important story to remind us that no matter what situation we are going through, there will always be a perfect timing for God's timing. And that's something we need to learn. God doesn't do things in our timing. He does things in the best timing, which are his timing. And so there's going to be two parts of this this activity, shall I say. The reading and the discussion is going to be today. And then on Wednesday, we're going to follow on and do another activity. So you better come back on Wednesday to find out what the next activity is. But for Joshua 3 and 4, you're going to read it, and in the story it talks about how the Israelites crossed the river Jordan, and that reminds us of God making a way when things seem impossible. And just like Joshua encouraged the Israelites to collect stones for God's goodness, to remind them about God's goodness, and to help them share the stories of what God's done in their life. So that's what the verse is about, 3 and 4. So you're going to have a read about it. And then there's a few questions that you can think about after you've read them. So one of the questions is, how do you think the Israelites carried the Ark of the Covenant felt? How do you think they felt? So once you've read it, you can think about how they felt. But I'm going to give you a little bit of an idea. Imagine you were told to step out into water. How would you feel? I know I would be a bit nervous. I'd be a bit scared. I don't know what to expect, what's in the water. So think about how the Israelites would have felt when they were told to step out into the water. And what differences and similarities can you find with the river crossing and the time when the Israelites crossed the Red Sea? So you're going to have to look up for the crossing of the Red Sea with Moses and compare the two stories between Moses and the crossing of the Red Sea and Joshua and the Israelites crossing the river Jordan. So to find differences and similarities, that's just something for you to think about. Think about what is the purpose of the story. Now, in this verse in 3 and 4, it tells you about how Joshua told the Israelites to pick up stones for them to remember all the goodness that God had done for them. And you have a chat with your family. If they're a bit busy, just find out a time where they can listen or answer a few questions. And I want you to ask them about what is a story of something that God has done in their life that they can share on to you. Because that's how stories and God's goodness is shared by our personal experiences with God's greatness. Then we pass it on to the next person, and then they seek God and they look out for God and they want to experience God's goodness. And that's how the God's kingdom, from Wednesday when we discussed about God's kingdom, that is how God's kingdom grows. So if we don't do that, we will never know about God's goodness if we don't share it or if we don't hear about it. Because I know I've heard loads of stories about God's goodness and what he's done in people's lives that are in my life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is incredible. I definitely want a relationship with with God. I want him to be my father. I want to personally experience God's goodness in my life. And I certainly have. Growing up, throughout my whole life, becoming an adult, there's definitely loads of examples and loads of time God has worked in my life and done good things for me. So speak to your parents. It might even be over dinner. Maybe when you're having dinner with your family, just have a discussion. Let them tell you times where God has really worked in their lives and God has showed greatness. Tell them, speak to them about that, and let them share with you. And maybe even if you've experienced something, share with them. Share your experience, God's greatness with them. So those stories can encourage us. Sorry, my battery was just about to die. Those stories can encourage us and expectant in the next generation. So what that means is that if we hear it now, then it gets passed down generation to generation, and then we become expectant in our lives to experience God's goodness. And I can't wait to share my experiences with people who might not know God yet. When I go out and talk about God, all those experiences I cannot wait to share. So the activity you're going to do, which will link onto the activity on Wednesday, but today's activity is you're going to find a rock, just a small rock, about that big, and give it a nice wash, dry it out. You're going to need a paint and paintbrush. If you don't have paint and paintbrush, felt tips will work on it as well. Ask your adults if you've allowed if they've got paint and paintbrush for you. If not, just use your colouring and pencils. If you dip a colouring and pencil into water, it goes like a bit creamy and you can draw on the rock. So what you're going to do is once you've dried it and cleaned it, paint it in any pattern you would like. Any design, any picture, anything. Even maybe on the other side, you might want to write an encouraging verse or an encouraging word. So maybe hope or faith or love or God is life or anything on that, like God is my father. Any form of encouraging words. And maybe you want to discuss this with your adults again and see if they've got any verses that they can tell you that encourage people. Write it on the back of the rock. And then once it's completely dry and it's all beautiful, then put it back into the wild. Put it out. Maybe you go for a walk. Put it along your walk somewhere so that someone else can find that rock, pick it up, and they can experience. They maybe look at it and be like, maybe it could be even someone that's having a really bad day that picks it up. And it will really brighten their day. Maybe when they turn it over, they'll see the verse and they'll go look up the verse in the Bible. It might be someone that doesn't even know God yet, picks it up, looks at the verse, looks in the Bible for the first time, and starts questioning and starts wanting to know who this God person is, this God who created the earth for us. So I want us to go out. This is going to be a way to share God's good news by not having to speak to anyone, just leaving it there. Someone's going to pick it up and be like, oh goodness, look at this, and be inquisitive. Start questioning it maybe, and then whoever finds your rock will be blessed and encouraged. So it could be encouraging them on a bad day, encouraging them to know God. There's loads of good things that will come out of you putting that rock back into the wild and finding and letting someone else find it. So come back on Wednesday for the next half of this activity that will link onto the verses and the rocks and stuff. So I hope to see you on Wednesday, and have an amazing Sunday and an even better week coming. I'll see you soon. Bye.